When Pickle Wheat pulled something from the Louisiana swamp that day, her hands were shaking. It wasn't a gator. It wasn't even something from this century. What she held in her palms was a piece of history that experts said shouldn't exist. Not there, not preserved like that, and definitely not where they found it. The swamp has always kept secrets, but this discovery changed everything they thought they knew about what's really lurking beneath those dark waters. And the more they dug, the more questions surfaced. Questions that nobody wanted to answer. Troy Landry wasn't hunting gators this time. He'd brought Pickle out to the deepest, most untouched parts of the bayou for something completely different. They were tracking down rumors that had been whispered through Louisiana for generations. Stories about a lost Native American civilization that once thrived in these exact swamps before disappearing without a trace. Most locals dismissed it as legend, but Troy had a hunch there was more to it. The thing about Louisiana swamp soil is that it destroys everything. The acidity is so brutal that organic material breaks down in years, not centuries. Bones dissolve. Wood rots. Anything from the past gets swallowed up and erased like it never existed. That's why archaeologists rarely bother searching these waters. It's a graveyard where nothing survives. But Troy and Pickle weren't amateurs. Between them, they had over 60 years of experience navigating these channels, and they knew where the water behaved differently, where the soil composition changed, where nature broke its own rules. They pushed deeper into an area most boats avoid, following instincts honed by generations of swamp life. And that's when everything changed. Pickle's hand went into the mud and came back holding something that made her blood run cold. A human jawbone. But not just any jawbone, this one still had teeth. Pearly white teeth that gleamed in the murky swamp light like they belonged to someone who'd just visited a dentist yesterday, not someone who'd been buried for potentially thousands of years. "This feeling just seeps in your bones," Pickle said later, her voice barely above a whisper. She's seen plenty of death in the swamp. Gators, deer, even the occasional drowning victim. But this was different. This felt ancient and wrong and deeply personal all at once. The weight of it in her hand wasn't just physical. Troy's reaction said everything. "This blows my mind," he kept repeating, turning the bone over carefully. Here was a man who'd faced down 1,000-pound gators without flinching, who'd spent his entire life in waters that could swallow a person whole, and he looked genuinely shaken. The air around them changed, got thicker somehow. Both of them felt it. That creeping sensation that they'd just opened a door that was meant to stay closed. They didn't stop with the jawbone. Within hours, Pickle and Troy had uncovered skull fragments, a scapula, leg bones, an entire collection of human remains scattered across the swamp floor. Each piece told the same impossible story. Somehow, against every law of nature and decomposition, these bones had survived for what archaeologists would later estimate to be thousands of years in an environment designed to destroy them. One crew member who examined the remains couldn't hide his awe. "We could be the first people to touch these in millennia," he said, cradling a femur like it was made of glass. Think about that. The last hands to hold these bones might have belonged to someone who lived before the pyramids were built, before written language, before recorded history. The preservation quality baffled everyone who saw them. Swamp water is essentially nature's acid bath. It should have dissolved these remains in decades, maybe a century at most. But here they were, intact enough that experts could study them, with bone structure still solid and recognizable. Something had protected these remains. Something had kept them hidden and preserved in waters that should have erased every trace. But what? The big question nobody could answer. How did these people end up here? Ancient Native American burial sites aren't unusual in Louisiana, but finding one preserved in the middle of a swamp is borderline impossible. Bodies don't just wash ashore and stay intact for thousands of years. The bayou doesn't work that way. Some archaeologists suggested these weren't accidental deaths. The way the bones were positioned, the location, the sheer number of remains in one concentrated area, it all pointed to something intentional. Either this was a sacred burial ground protected by methods we don't understand, or these bodies were placed here deliberately for reasons that died with whoever put them there. What shocked the experts most was the burial method itself. Whoever laid these people to rest knew exactly how to shield them from the elements. The positioning, the soil composition in that specific spot, even the water flow patterns, everything aligned perfectly to create a natural preservation chamber. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from luck. But there's a darker possibility that nobody wants to discuss on camera. What if these weren't honored dead at all? What if someone knew this spot would hide secrets forever, and they used it for something far more sinister? Pickle Wheat isn't some reality TV newcomer playing swamp guide for the cameras. Her family has worked these waters for 4 generations. Her great-grandfather was among the original gator hunters in St. Bernard Parish, back when hunting meant survival, not entertainment. She grew up on stories about every channel, every hidden bayou, every spot where the water runs strange. That's what makes this discovery so disturbing for her. These are the same swamps her ancestors navigated, the same hunting grounds her great-grandfather taught her grandfather, who taught her father, who taught her. If anyone should have known about human remains in these waters, it would be her family. They've covered every square inch of this bayou for over a century, but they never found anything. Never even heard whispers about bones or burial grounds in this particular area. Which means either these remains appeared recently, which the carbon dating proves isn't true, or the swamp kept this secret even from families who've lived and died on its waters for generations. Pickle's connection to this land runs deeper than most people understand. She doesn't just work the swamp, it's in her blood, her history, her identity, and now she's learning it holds mysteries even her family never suspected. Troy's reputation took a serious hit in 2024 when Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries slapped him with citations for improper alligator tagging. Turns out the king of the swamp had been running unauthorized hunting lines in Lake Palourde, and agents discovered a dead gator hooked to gear bearing his identification. The official report detailed how Troy had been using gifted tags that didn't match his licensed hunting areas. In Louisiana, that's not just breaking rules. It's threatening the carefully managed gator population that everyone's livelihood depends on. Other hunters weren't happy. Some called it preferential treatment gone wrong. Others suggested he thought fame put him above regulations that everyone else has to follow. Troy claimed misunderstanding, said the tags were legitimate gifts from other licensed hunters. But the citation stuck, and suddenly the man known for decades of swamp expertise was facing questions about whether he'd been cutting corners all along. The timing couldn't have been worse, right as Swamp Mysteries was gaining traction and his brand was expanding beyond just gator hunting. It raised uncomfortable questions. If he'd bend rules about gator tags, what else might get overlooked? The bone discovery happened during this controversy, adding another layer of suspicion to an already complicated situation. These bones represent something archaeologists rarely get, a window into Louisiana's earliest inhabitants that hasn't been destroyed by time. Most evidence of ancient cultures in the Gulf Coast region is gone, dissolved by acidic soil and hostile environments. What Pickle and Troy found could rewrite entire chapters of pre-colonial American history. But here's what really matters. They found this during a routine filming session in waters they hunt regularly. They weren't excavating some protected archaeological site with ground-penetrating radar and university funding. They literally stumbled across it while looking for something else entirely. Which raises a terrifying possibility. How many more sites like this exist? The Louisiana Bayou covers over 4 million acres of wetlands, most of it unexplored and unmapped. If one random spot in waters that get fished and hunted constantly held perfectly preserved human remains, what's hiding in the areas nobody ever touches? What's buried under docks, beneath boat launches, in channels that haven't been navigated in decades? Every hunter who works these waters is now wondering what they've been floating over their entire lives. Every dock, every fishing spot, every quiet channel could be sitting on top of history, or something darker that was meant to stay hidden forever. The swamp isn't just home to gators and snakes anymore. It's a time capsule holding thousands of years of secrets literally beneath the surface where Troy and Pickle make their living. Every time they drop a line or check a trap, they're navigating over history that predates everything they know about this land. What they discovered that day changed how everyone looks at these waters. The bayou isn't just dangerous because of what's alive in it, it's because of what's been dead and waiting underneath for millennia. And the scariest part, this is probably just the beginning. The bones Pickle pulled from that mud opened a door nobody knew existed. Now the question isn't what they found, it's what else is down there, preserved and hidden, waiting for the next hunter to reach into the wrong patch of swamp and pull up something that should have stayed buried forever.